Decisions that this government now has to make come on the back of a lost decade from the former coalition government, the worst national security government in our country's history.
Multi-billion-dollar defence programs could be wound back or scrapped entirely, with the most significant military review in years to be released tomorrow. Tributes flow in across the world for Australian entertainment icon Barry Humphries, who's died at the age of 89. The number of MPs in the federal parliament could rise, with Labor open to increasing the amount of politicians, and US embassy staff evacuated from Sudan as more foreign nationals try to leave amid the ongoing fighting. Good evening. It's being promised as the most significant military review in a decade, with the Defence Strategic Review said to be released tomorrow. Multi-billion-dollar defence programs could be wound back or scrapped entirely, with the government saying the report outlines what needs to be done to protect Australia in the years ahead. National reporter Austin Pollock has the very latest.
Well, a new independent report has revealed that Australia's Defence Force requires significant restructuring. The Defence Strategic Review, conducted by former Defence Force Chief Angus Houston and former Defence Minister Stephen Smith, recommends delaying and scaling back some projects to address overspending. Among the biggest casualties is the Land Vehicle Combat Program, which was originally slated to produce 450 infantry fighting vehicles. However, the program will be reduced to only 129 vehicles now, and the second instalment of the self-propelled howitzers will be scrapped. Instead, the ADF will prioritise the purchase of land-based missiles to deter regional threats. The report proposes accelerating and expanding programs for certain landing aircraft, long-range missiles and mobile land-based missiles. The DSR includes over 100 recommendations and addresses funding issues and budget constraints, highlighting that certain projects have outdone capacity by 24% over forward estimates. Recommendations for naval, aviation, cyber and space projects will also be included in the report. Defence Minister Richard Marles has labelled the report as the most important re-evaluation of Australia's Defence Force in 35 years.
Against a backdrop of the most complex strategic landscape that we have faced since the end of the Second World War. The review has met with 150 different experts across academia, think tanks, defence industry and the Defence Force itself. It's received more than 360 submissions from the general public, and I have no doubt that the report that the Prime Minister and I are about to receive will be one of the most important works in Australia's defence history, and because the decisions that this government now has to make come on the back of a lost decade from the former coalition government, the worst national security government in our country's history.
Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill has told the ABC that the report outlines what needs to be done to protect Australia in the years ahead and how the government plans to get there. She also stated that the country is facing difficult decades ahead and that Defence Force is not ready for the challenges involved. The government believes it can meet those challenges, but not if Australia continues to be on the trajectory of waste and neglect seen in previous years. Many defence analysts had predicted these recommendations following rising tensions in the Indo-Pacific and growing issues within the Defence Force.
And it's taken Canberra a very long time to wake up to how seriously Australia's strategic circumstances have deteriorated. Pushed into having a rather rushed review, they've really only given Stephen Smith and Angus Houston about 6 months to do what is a huge task of completely reanalysing Australia's defence policy from the ground up.
The report also highlights the challenges facing the defence budget. While the Morrison government budget included $42 billion worth of defence spending over the next 10 years, it is not yet funded under Albanese's government spending. Additionally, the defence budget had to contend with a $15 billion reduction in allocated spending over the same decade due to reallocations and efficiency dividends. The unclassified version of the review will be released tomorrow, with some recommendations to remain classified.
Anthony Albanese says Australia's relationship with New Zealand is absolutely critical as he meets with Chris Hipkins in Brisbane. Speaking alongside his Kiwi counterpart, the PM said newly announced citizenship arrangements help to normalise relations between the two nations. Both leaders also paid their respects to fallen veterans ahead of Anzac Day. The two leaders will next meet at the upcoming coronation of King Charles in the UK. Tributes continue to flow in across the world for Australian entertainment icon Barry Humphries, who's died at the age of 89. Current and former leaders are paying tribute to the man, known for playing characters such as Dame Edna Everage. Reporter Lincoln Holmes has more.
An Australian entertainment icon, Barry Humphries, known for his alter egos like Dame Edna, passing away following complications from hip surgery. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called Humphries one of a kind. New South Wales Premier Chris Minns described him as a legend, saying he set the world's stages and screens alight. Victorian Premier Dan Andrews says he contributed more than 7 decades to the entertainment industry, and whose legacy will live on through his many characters and iconic writing. Opposition leader Peter Dutton posted on social media that Australia has lost its greatest cultural comedian, who will forever be a treasured Aussie icon. And the former PM Scott Morrison saying we have lost a true genius and great Australian.
Barry Humphries, through his 89 years, made an enormous contribution to Australia, and he also showcased that uniquely Australian sense of humour to the world.
The front page of today's Sun Herald simply reading, "Farewell, Possums," describing the master comedian who became a global superstar. Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
The federal government has announced they will set up a new registry to crack down on scam text messages. Communications Minister Michelle Rowland says the newly created SMS Sender ID registry will help to block scammers who infiltrate legitimate text streams. It's hoped this will prevent scam text. The Australian reports that once it is set up, $10 million will be allocated in next month's federal budget and it will be operational within a year. The number of MPs in the federal parliament could increase, with Labor open to increasing the amount. Nine reports that MPs now represent almost triple the amount of people they did at Federation, with 151 House of Representatives electorates, the newest being Hawke in Victoria. Restoring the representation roughly what it was after reforms from Bob Hawke would require between 223 to 234 seats in the lower house and up to 122 senators. Now, each state is guaranteed at least 5 seats under the Constitution. Territories, though, currently have less MPs and less senators. With less than 18 months to go until Queensland decides, new polling indicates Anastasia Palaszczuk's government may be on track for a loss. The LNP is aiming to win a state election for the first time in over a decade, with Labor approaching 9 straight years in power. Political editor Roman McKinnon explains.
It's been a long time in power for Anastasia Palaszczuk. Labor has been in office in Queensland almost every year since the 1990s, and more recently has been in government since 2015, when Campbell Newman lost after just a single term. But could that all be over at the upcoming state election? New YouGov polling that was published in the Courier Mail gives the Liberal Nationals a 51 to 49 lead against Labor on a two-party preferred basis. Compare that to the 2020 election numbers, which was 53.2 to 46.8. On a primary vote basis, the LNP up at 39, Labor 33, the Greens 13, One Nation 10, Other at 3 and Katters Australia at 2.
The LNP will win in Queensland.
You reckon?
I reckon so, yeah. You've got to remember that 52% of its population is outside of Brisbane.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of political real estate is outside of Brisbane.
Labor currently has a majority of just 5 seats, but the LNP needs 13 seats to win, meaning a minority government is a possibility here, with several minor parties already holding seats. Opposition leader David Crisafulli has told 6 News the party is now ready.
We've sorted out ourselves. We are united, we are focused, and this government's been in power for 3 terms or 10 years at the next election. And one of your previous guests is the current Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese. And one of the things he said in the lead up to the last election, which I remember well, was governments don't get better in their fourth term. And I reckon he's right.
We've now also heard that the United Australia Party, which is not currently registered in Queensland, could contest, with sources telling The Australian that Clive Palmer sees the election as a big opportunity. He reportedly will recommended preferencing the LNP. The UAP only had 0.62% of the vote last election, but managed more than 5% in 2015 and came second in the seat of Callide. With no upper house, minor parties in Queensland can only get elected through lower house seats, which may be more of a challenge but does provide some unique results. Queensland will head to the polls in October next year.
One of the Democrat lawmakers expelled from Tennessee state legislature is now speaking to 6 News. Justin J Pearson and Justin Jones were both expelled from the House earlier this month for their roles in gun control protests, which was conducted inside the state capitol. It was described by Republicans as disorderly. Pearson was later reappointed. Speaking to North American correspondent Wyatt Sharp, he was asked about the future of expulsion powers that legislators currently have.
When you have people who can bend the rules and use the rules in such an egregious way that they can actually subvert the democratic process and then force a community to pay $1 million for an election, it is an injustice and is unfair, and it is just completely and utterly wrong. But we cannot detract away from why we were expelled, why Representative Johnson was nearly expelled. It was because we were advocating for the end of gun violence. We were advocating that we start to listen to students, and we start to listen to parents, and we start to listen to community members who are tired of seeing the proliferation of guns and the bad legislation that's being passed that's making it easier for people to access these weapons, and particularly weapons of war like assault rifles, AR-15s, AK-47s, in the hands of individuals who really should not have them, and in the hands of normal people and ordinary citizens who shouldn't have access to them. And we have to continue to prioritize that issue and center that issue, because that's why we were expelled. That's why Representative Johnson was nearly expelled. It was because we did a peaceful protest, listening to the thousands of people in our communities and in our state who were demanding we do something about gun violence.
And meanwhile, here at home, One Nation leader Pauline Hanson says if Anthony Albanese believes independent Senator Lydia Thorpe is unfit for Parliament, he must start the process of having her deemed ineligible to hold a Senate position. Now, the power to expel an Australian MP has only ever been used once federally. 6 News GovCheck editor Stuart Jeffrey has more.
In response to Lydia Thorpe's actions at that strip club, Pauline Hanson has taken to Twitter to say that although she doesn't believe that there are any mental health issues here, if there are, then Anthony Albanese must, and I quote, must start the process of having her deemed ineligible to hold a Senate position. As of the Parliamentary Privileges Act of 1987, that power hasn't been there. Of course, we had it originally because in 1901 we inherited the British rules, which at the point in time did allow for expulsions. But in 1987, Parliament put their foot down and said, we're going to outline all the different powers and privileges and immunities that Parliament has, and they expressly said that you cannot expel a party member. The only expulsion we do have was all the way back in, I believe, 1920, when Hugh McMahon, the member for Kalgoorlie, was expelled from Parliament. He was pretty pro-Irish. Of course, after the year after he left Parliament, he went to the Irish Race Convention, of course, in Paris. He was heavily involved with Irish activity in Ireland. He was also opposed to the British government in Ireland, because you've got to remember, at this point in time, this is just after Ireland fought for its independence, and his support for Ireland was at odds with Australia being part of the British Empire and a loyal supporter of the Crown.
Obviously, as we just said, their power to expel has been gone for a while, but it seems that there certainly could have been some cases where a member might have been expelled if that power had been in place. And I think the name that's been thrown around is Fraser Anning.
Yeah, of course, after the Christchurch mass shooting, he linked it to Muslim migration, then called for a ban on all Muslim migration to Australia, and also said that New Zealand should do the same thing. He was censured by the Senate for that. which basically is a condemnation, but because they don't have the power to expel him, they couldn't expel him, and it's the same situation here.
US embassy staff have been evacuated from Sudan as fighting continues. President Joe Biden says they are temporarily suspending operations at the embassy, with the State Department also saying they will continue to assist Americans in Sudan in planning for their own safety and provide regular updates to citizens in the area. Other foreign nationals are also continuing to try and leave. The Sudanese army says they are facilitating the evacuation of diplomats from the US as well as the UK, France and China. More preparations are now visible outside Buckingham Palace ahead of the coronation of King Charles III on May the 6th. It is the first coronation Westminster Abbey has hosted in 7 decades. Euro correspondent Brooklyn Caldwell is there.
As the coronation for King Charles III is just weeks away, preparations continue in and around Buckingham Palace and London. Now, some developments have arisen regarding the coronation. Prince Harry will be in attendance, however, his wife Meghan Markle will not be in attendance. She, along with her kids, will remain at home in California. Now, it's understood that this will draw a private crowd of 2,000 guests. Now, of course, people from around the world will be flocking in and around London. There will be a hive of activity around London, and it will certainly be a very historic event. Now, this is the first coronation that has been televised in colour, and this will certainly fill up the media stands all around me. Now, we've got stands everywhere, flags are being raised, and it's looking very, very glamorous here at Buckingham Palace. It's going to be a very, very big day. Come Saturday, May 6th, the coronation starts at 11 a.m.
Former Liberal candidate for Warringah, Catherine Deeves, has pulled out of the Liberal Senate vacancy contest. A New South Wales Senate seat was made vacant following the death of Jim Molan earlier this year. Deeves announced exactly a week ago she would contest. Now she has pulled out, with Andrew Constance believed to be a front-runner after Warren Mundine also pulled out. It's understood a final decision on who will enter the Senate will be made sometime next month. One of the newly elected New South Wales Upper House MPs will soon be representing a party with a different name. John Roddick was elected for the Liberal Democrats, but the party will be soon voting on a name change. He spoke to 6 News a short time ago. John Roddick, thanks again for joining us, and congratulations.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Leo, and thank you for taking an interest in us before the election. You were about the only sort of one of the very, very few media outlets that paid any attention to the Liberal Democrats, but we got 164,000 people voted for us in New South Wales, so we're very happy.
It's an impressive amount here, and obviously it's certainly one up on what happened in 2019 when you almost got there with David Leyonhjelm on the ticket. You were very close. What do you think pushed the LDP over the line this time?
Look, I think there are multiple factors. Okay, so in the Liberal Democrats have traditionally done well in the sort of more affluent parts of Sydney, the North Shore and the eastern suburbs. Now, at the federal election a year ago, we did poorly in those areas, but we did very well in the western suburbs where the lockdowns were intense. So what happened at this state election is that we retained our support in the western suburbs, and we won back the more affluent suburbs. Now, we're not doing well in the country, and that's something that I very, very much want to fix up in the next 8 years, because I think that we've got a very good message for non-metropolitan people in New South Wales. There'll be a party meeting, an annual general meeting of the whole national party, from all the states in Melbourne in a couple of weeks. There's six names on the table, so I think the sort of the 2 front runners at this stage are the Libertarian Party of Australia and the Liberty Party. I like both of them, and I'll be interested to see what arguments people put forward at the debate.
Are you confident? I know you're just speaking as one person here, but are you confident you can use that name, Libertarian Party, given there is a kind of non-existent, it's not registered, but it does exist. There is a party under that name.
You're very well informed, Leo. I'm very impressed, mate. I tell people that you're going to be the next Laurie Oakes, and I hope I'm right. Okay, yes, there is a political party not registered, and we're quite friendly with them, called the Libertarian Party. Now, we are having discussions with them. I'm not directly involved in those discussions, but I'm hopeful that we can come to an arrangement if that's the party name that we do decide to choose.
What are you going to be really focusing on in your new role?
Okay, well, look, libertarians believe in, cutting taxes, cutting spending, cutting regulation, cutting debt, okay? So we want a much smaller government. Now, in the immediate term, we've got two political massive crises, in my view, which is the energy crisis. I really want to take a stand for global warming skepticism. I support Ian Plimer. Now, there are mixed views in my party, but the New South Wales branch is pretty united. But, we think that the world has been misled in the last 30 years by the global warming science. Now, we're also radically a colour-blind party. We are opposed to The Voice. We're unlike Peter Dutton. I don't mind Peter Dutton. I think he's a better person than Scott Morrison. But Peter Dutton dithered for a year about The Voice. What's there to dither about? We don't believe in a constitutional recognition of race. We think that the government should be race blind. So we'll be very opposed to that. Now, longer term, a more specific policy might be of interest to you, Leah. We believe that the education system should be radically reformed. We believe in this policy called school vouchers, which the great Milton Friedman first proposed in the 1950s, which is that we don't need a Department of Education. We don't need a national curriculum or a statewide curriculum. We need to simply, all the government needs to do is at the beginning of each school year, the government gives a voucher to all parents of school-aged children, and the parents then decide where they would like to cash that voucher in to educate their child for a year. Now that means that that schools are going to become businesses. They're going to be profit. There's going to be a profit motive there. To say, and the parents are going to have to say to the parents, please educate your kids at our school because we offer A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. And nobody loves their kids more than the parents. Certainly, a lot more than the Department of Education bureaucrats. So we want to say we want to liberalise the education system, and we believe these school vouchers are the future. Yeah, they are taking off very rapidly in the United States. Arizona has fully introduced them. I think there's about another 6 states which have got school vouchers in their legislative chambers, and they're debating it. And people, particularly parents, have become very concerned about state-sponsored education after the COVID episode, when they the parents could see what the kids were being taught, and many of them were rightfully alarmed.
But why would you want to make a school more like a business, as you say yourself? Why would it have a profit motive? Shouldn't it just the school's only intention to be to educate children?
Well, that will be the motive, because the parents are only going to want to. The parents love their kids more than anybody. The parents are going to say, "Look, I think my kid's good at business, or he's good at art, or sport, or whatever it might be, music." And so the parents are going to say, look, we think that this school is going to be the best. There's going to be a big diversity of schools. Now, there might be religious schools. There might be schools out there that want to teach woke ideology nonstop. Now, I don't think many parents are going to want to send their kids there, but if they want to, I think it'll be about 2%, let them do it. Now, it will be a business. Why do we want it to be a business? Because business always operates more efficiently and more professionally than government bureaucracy. So we should not be shy away from the profit motive. The profit motive is what got us out of the Stone Age.
And on the voice policy that you've gotten, you've been opposed to it publicly, your party. I know you've said that if Australia does indeed vote yes, you will campaign for repeal. Isn't that just campaigning against what the people have voted for, what the people want? What is the will of the people, essentially?
Well, look, we are pro-democracy, but democracy is only the best of the available options, and we do respect it. But democracy is far from perfect, and we are very hopeful that the Australian people vote no to the voice. But if they do vote yes, we believe it will be a catastrophe. We believe that we'll be embedding in our constitution, our liberal constitution, we're going to be embedding there a race classification. Now, that can never end well. Now, I do know that the people promoting the yes case, I'm absolutely certain that they do have good intentions. I'm just telling you that they're 100% wrong. It's never, ever worked out well in the past when the government wants to give special political rights to people of a certain race. There's no ifs, no buts about it. Look, I wrote an article for The Spectator about 6 years ago, and I said, look, Chris Minns is the future of the Labor Party. Okay, now look, anyone that loves Australian politics wants there to be the best Labor leaders they can possibly have. Okay, now you'd have to be so partisan that you're unpatriotic if you want the Labor Party to have idiotic leaders. Now Chris Minns is good. As far as Labor leaders go, he's good. Now, he's not Dan Andrews. He's not Jacinda Ardern. He's not a crazy lefty. He's from the right of the Labor Party. I think he goes to church. He's educated at Princeton. He's already, look. I'm very upset that he's so against privatisations. But he has recently said, there was a proposal that, the rents are going up. The rents are going up. We need the government to come in and tell the landlords they've got to cap the rents. They can't go up too high. Well, Chris Minns came out and said, no, that's not a good idea. I was very relieved to hear that. Look, I think as Labor leaders go, he's as good as we can hope for. He seems like a nice bloke. I suspect there'll be lots of different disagreements when his bills come up to the Legislative Council. But yes, I will certainly have an attitude of trying to be cooperative. But at the same time, we're never going to betray our libertarian principles about reducing the size of the government.
Now let's check in with Ivan and Melly with a look at what's making news right now on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Tonight on WAMN News, imminent closure of the State Animal Resource Centre to have significant impact on WA community, with 60 people losing their jobs. An exclusive interview coming up.
Also tonight, a mixed bag performance. Peter Kennedy's assessment on the Premier's trip to China.
It's all about lack of staff. Nursing union reacts to government's hospital safety report.
And honouring our Anzacs. RSLWA President urges everyone to march for our mates. And later, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment. Join us tonight on WMN News' Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Thanks both Ivan and Melly there. Now to tomorrow's weather forecast. Right across the country, Brisbane will be partly cloudy, 26 degrees. Similar conditions for Sydney, 21 there, a top of 22 in Canberra, 24 in Melbourne where it'll also be sunny. Also sunny, 21 in Hobart, Adelaide 26, 28 up in Alice Springs. Heavy rain expected in Perth, just 17 there, and in Darwin a warm top of 34. A reminder of the top stories we are following this hour on 6 News, and it's being promised as the most significant military review in a decade. The Defence Strategic Review set to be released tomorrow. Multi-billion-dollar defence projects could be wound back or scrapped entirely, with the government saying the report outlines what needs to be done to protect Australia. And tributes continue to flow in across the world for Australian entertainment icon Barry Humphries, who's died at the age of 89. Current and former leaders are remembering the man, known for playing characters such as Dame Edna Etheridge. And that is 6 News for this hour. There is more news 24/7 on our website, 6newsau.com, and on social media. Just search 6NewsAU to find us. More news coverage continues right after this. For now, though, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.
The coronation of a king. As the world prepares to see a new sovereign crowned, 6 News has special coverage covering the latest developments live.
Reporting on stories here in Europe
to the impact here at home.
The coronation of King Charles III. Special coverage live on the 6 News YouTube channel and our website, 6newsau.com.
Almost a year on from the federal election, what will Jim Chalmers be delivering in his second ever budget speech? Impartial reporting on what the Albanese government's decisions will mean for you.
Budget 2023 special coverage live on the 6 News YouTube channel and our website 6newsau.com. When big news breaks.
It pains me to announce that I have no option but to resign from the office of